Hello learners, welcome to our session today once again, a continuation of what we are doing earlier on. Recall in our previous classes we've been introducing the whole concept to do with mixed and yield variances. So in our session today, yes, it is a continuation of what we started earlier on. So today I want us to handle an illustration question from our past paper. This question will enable us to understand the whole concept to do with mixed and yield variances again. By now, I know you are very good at that. So this is our question. This is our question here. I'll share it on our screen, believing that you're able to view it. So in our question here, we are told that Dow Chemical Limited manufactures a single product branded XP. The following information for the financial year 2018 relates to the product. Number one, standard cost per unit of product XP. I'm given. For us to produce that product, we required F, G, and H. kgs, standard quantity. These are the standard items. For labor, this is what you had budgeted. Note 2, we are told that budgeted sales for the period amount to 4,500 units and 260 per unit. There were no budgeted opening and closing inventories for product XP. The actual materials and labor used were as follows. So I'm given the actual material used as well as the labor. Then required here, we are asked to compute. We are told that during the period, 4,100 units of product XP were produced and sold for 1158. Compute material price variance, material mix variance, material lead variance, as well as the labor rate variance. So given such a question, my good students, and you're given good marks here, these are almost 11 free marks that the examiner is giving us. These are almost 11 free marks that the examiner is giving us. So where are we going to start from? So let me kind of squeeze this question here at the corner so that you work it out. So that is the data that I'm given. That is the data that I'm given. That is the data that I'm given, my good students. So therefore, let us work it out. The first thing that the examiner wants us to calculate is material price variance, which I know by now we are very, very good on that, which I know now we are very, very good on that. So material price variance is the first thing that the examiner wants us to compute. So allow me to erase here. So the first thing that the examiner wants us to do is to compute material price variance. And you know very well, anytime you're talking of material price variance, basically, what are we looking at? We want to compare our prices. Let me squeeze it here. Material price variance. We know very well that we are comparing our standard price and the actual price. All this valued into what? Valued into our actual quantity of our material. Actual quantity of our material. Actual quantity of our material. So therefore, what will we be having here? If we can check it out clearly, I'm having how many materials? I'm having F, material G, and H. So that is to say, my material price variance at this point, my good students, so should we be having? I should be talking of actual quantity of material F. We are given how many kgs? Look at note 4. F, I'm given 59,800, 53,500. I'm given 33,300, right? Into our standard price, which is how much? Standard price, I'm given a figure of F, which is 4, 3. And this other one, I'm given how much? I'm given 4, 3, and 6. What about our actual price? Actual price at this point, I'm given actual price For material F, 4.25. Material G, I'm given 2.80. Whereas for the other one, I'm given 6.40. So therefore, what will be our variances? Imagine that is all the examiner wanted us to do in the first case. See, whenever you've seen such questions, you should just be smiling, right? Because you have the concept right and working it out, it will be very easy. So therefore, I'm talking of 4 minus 4.25. Basically, I'm having an adverse of how much? 59,800 times answer. I'm given 14,950. I'm having 14,950, which is adverse. Because I'd budgeted to spend 4, but I ended up spending more than what you had budgeted. What about the other case? 3 minus 2.80 times 53,500. That should give us a favorable of 10,700. Favorable. I'd budgeted to spend 3 shillings, but we ended up spending 2.80, right? Excuse, that is what you are looking at. The other key element you are talking over 6 minus 6.40, in that case, times 33,300. 33,300. So in this case, I'm having 13,320, which is adverse. I'd planned to spend 6 shillings, but you ended up spending 6.40. So therefore, I'm having an adverse of that. So therefore, if at all you are to determine the total, of course, that should give us what? Material price variance I'm having plus 10,700. Of course, minus 14. We are talking of minus 14,950 plus 10,700 minus 13,320. If at all you are to determine the total, I should be having an adverse of 17,570 adverse variance, right? And that is what you should be having. That is what you should be having. As simple as that. So, after we have determined that, we proceed to the next component. The next component here, what will you be required to do? The next component, I'm required to determine the aspect of material mix variance. And determining material mix variance, we know very well that we're having our formula correct. And having our formula of material mix variance, which we had looked at it earlier on. So therefore, material mix variance, if you can recall, my good students, material mix variance, what will we be talking about? We should be talking of the difference between our standard mix of the actual total input, we less our actual mix. In this case, we multiply by our standard price. That is what we mentioned. Excuse, that is what we mentioned. That is what we mentioned, right? That is what we mentioned, which I believe you have it in your previous video, and that is what you had looked at. So therefore, at this point, how will you determine our standard mix? Given that question, still believe that you're able to view this question of ours here. You're able to view this question of ours here. Look at which note. We need to determine our standard mix. So therefore, I need to determine my standard mix. How many materials did you have in this question of ours? In this question of ours, you can clearly see we had how many materials? 3. We do have F, we do have G, and we do have H. So having F, G, and H, we look at the first bit here. We need the standard mix. So therefore, I'm going to ask myself, what had we budgeted to use to produce 1 unit? Like for F, we had 15 kgs. For G, we had 12 kgs. And for H, we had 8 kgs. That should give us a total of how much? That should give us a total of how much? That should give us a total of 15 plus 12 plus 8 to give us a total of 35. So we need our standard mix. Standard mix. If you can recall the concept, standard mix. So therefore, my standard mix, I should be talking of the first one, I'm having 15 of 35, 12, of 35 and 8 of 35 times what? Our actual input. What is our total actual input of our materials, my good students? Total actual input of our materials. What did we have? If we can check our question clearly, look at note number 4. Check out note number 4. In this question of ours, check out note number 4. What did we have for F? Actual. So I'm having F, G, and H. So for F, we had, of course, 59,800, 53,500, and we're having 33,300, 33,300, 33,300. So that should give us a total of how much if we sum it up? If we sum them up, what should we be having? In that case, clearly you can see the same concept that we had looked at earlier on is the same concept that we are applying it here. So I'm having 59,800 plus 53,500 plus 33,300, 33,300, which in this case should give us 146,600. 146,600, 146,600, 146,600. So therefore, we should be talking of 146,600, 146,600, 146,600. So that as at the end of the day, what will we be having? As at the end of the day, my good students, I should be talking of, for F, 15 of 35 times 146,600. This should give us a figure of 62,829. 12 of 35 times 146,600. This should give us 50,263. Then 8 of 35 times 146,600. This should give us 33,500, and that is of course 33,509. Okay, so that the total of course should give us a figure of how much? We're having 8 of 35 times 146,600, 33,509. I'm having 12 of 35 times, of course, 146,600. We're having there 50,263. And lastly, 15 of 35 times 146,600, which you're having there a figure of 829, right? So basically, this is now what you should be having. This is now what you should be having. So at that point, if we sum them up, 62,829 plus 50,263 plus 33,509 to give us how much? 146,601. So this one you can take it to be 8. This one you can take it to be 8. So that is what you should be having in terms of determining our standard mix of the actual total input. Our work will not end there. Our work will not end there, my good students. Our work will not end there. So that is to say, if I want to determine my material mix variance, my material mix variance for F, for G, and for H, this is what we should be having. Therefore, this is what we should be having. I'm going to have for F, I'm going to take our standard mix of the actual total input, which we have determined it to be 62,829, minus our actual mix, which is 59,800. The same case will happen with G. I'm having 50,000. We less we less 50,000 minus 50,000. 50,263. 50,000, sorry. 50,263. We less our actual, which was 53,500. 53,500. Whereas for H, I'm having 33,508. We less 33,300. Recall, we are supposed to multiply by our standard price. So standard price of material F, what did we have? Standard price of material F. I'm having it at that point, just a moment here. So you'll find that once you are able to master this concept, things will always tend to flow. Things will always tend to flow. Just a moment here. So once we have that, you'll find that once you have that concept, things will always tend to flow, right? Things will always tend to flow. So therefore, we are saying that we are multiplying here by our what? We are multiplying by our standard price. And standard price, actually, you can just pick it here. Or if you can check in your question there, that is note number 1, where we was given the aspect. Check in check it there. In note 1, I'm having 4, 3, and 6 as our standard price. So I multiply by 4, I multiply by 6, I multiply by that is 4, 3, 6. I multiply by 3, and we multiply by 6. So that should give us our variance. That should give us our variance. That should give us our variances. Where my material mix variance, confidently, I can come and say that we do have what? We do have the first one should give us 62,829 minus 59,800. Of course, times 4. I'm seeing I can have what? I'm having 62,829 minus 59,800 times 4. I'm having a favorable variance of 12,116. That is a favorable. The other bit, what do we have? The same concept applies. The same concept applies. We are talking of 50,263 minus 53,500 by 3. I'm having an adverse of 9711. 9711 adverse. Then lastly, we are talking of 33,508 minus 33,300. In that case, by 6, I'm having 33,508 minus 33,300 by 6 to give us 1248. 1248 favorable. So that is what Mwalimu is getting. That is what Mwalimu is getting, and that is what you should get, guys. So you'll find that given such questions and you have the previous knowledge of what we had when we introduced, it will be very easy for us. The second part, the third part actually, the examiner is asking us to determine what? The second part, the examiner is asking us to determine our material mix, or rather yield variance. So let me push it top. We are asked to determine our material yield variance. So I'm asked to determine our material yield variance. That is a question. We are asked to determine material yield variance. My good students, can you determine yield variance for Mwalimu? I want you guys to determine yield variance, or you say Mwalimu wafanye kazi yake. Mwalimu wafanye kazi yake. Given the fact that we have the previous knowledge and actually we've looked at so many concepts and questions in relation to that, we can determine our yield variance. Mwalimu will do his work. Mwalimu will do his work. Mwalimu here is going to do his work. Mwalimu here is going to do his work. So therefore, let Mwalimu do his work and give us our yield variance, right? Let Mwalimu do his work and give us our yield variance. So therefore, allow me to erase this bit. These are what you had in our previous question. So you'll find that, my good students, once you've mastered this concept, things will always be very easy, by the way. Things will just be flowing. Things will just be flowing. Things will just be flowing. So my material yield variance, what I should have in mind that for me to determine material yield variance, we are going to talk of our standard quantity minus our standard mix. Standard quantity minus standard mix, of course, of the actual total input. When I write standard mix, just know is a standard mix of the total actual input times what? Our standard price. That is what you should always be having, and that is what we mentioned earlier on, right? So this is to say that at this point, we don't have our standard quantity. The question is, if you're not given our standard quantity, should we leave our question like that because we are not given? No, we have to determine our standard quantity, right? And recall how to determine our standard quantity, my good students. To determine our SQ, you can always recall we are talking of what? Our standard quantity per unit times our actual units. This is what you must always recall, times our actual units. So therefore, in this case, what is our standard quantity? I look at, in this case, I'm having for material F, G, and H. What will be our standard quantity? Excuse me, the standard quantity per unit we are having, or rather we are given in this case a figure of how much. We're given how many kgs are we anticipated to use to produce 1 unit. Clearly you can see we had 15 kgs for F, for G we had 12, and H we had aspect of what? 8. So we are talking of 15 standard quantity per unit, 15, 12, and 8, times our actual units. What is our actual units? If you can check in our question here, our actual units, we were given in note 5. Check note 5 in our question. In note 5 in our question, we are told that actual units amounted to 4,100 units, right? 4,100 units. That was our actual units. 4,100 units. 4,100 units. 4,100 units. So this is what we have. 4,100 units, right? So therefore, having that case, believing that right now is visible, having that case, I should be having times 4,100 units, 4,100, 4,100, 4,100, right? To give us our SQ, to give us our SQ, to give us our SQ, to give us our SQ. So therefore, I'm having 15 by 4,100, 61,500. I'm having 12 by 4,100, 49,200. And lastly, I'm having 8 by 4,100, 32,800. So those are our standard quantity. Having our standard quantity, I think it will now be very easy for us to determine our material yield variance, right? So to determine our material yield variance, already we had computed these elements of ours here. So my material yield variance for F, so material yield variance, we are talking of for F, we should be having our standard quantity. I'm having it as 61,500 with less our standard mix. Standard mix already, look at this case, we are determining it here, 62,829. 62,829. Let me kind of do this so that you should be able to see where that is coming from. You see this one, so you had already computed here our standard mix of the actual total input. This is what you had computed. That's what Mwalimu is taking. So don't wonder where is this figure coming from. So you are talking of 62,829 of course, times our standard rate, which in this case our standard rate we had what? 4. For F. For G, the same concept will apply. I'm having 49 to 100 with less the standard mix, which was 50, 263. We multiply by the rate, which was aspect of 3. Then we having here for FGH 32,800 with less 33,508 times whatever that I'm having, which is 6. So therefore our variance, what will we be having as our variance? That will be, of course, 61,500 minus 62,829. We multiply by 4 to give us a figure of our variance of 53,16, which is adverse. Then I'm having 49,200 minus 50,263 times 3, which should give us 31,89, which is adverse. The other case, 32,800 minus 33,508 times 6, which should give us 42,48, which is also adverse. And basically, my good students, that is what we are required to do up to yield variances. Up to yield variances. I'm leaving you to do for rate and go ahead and also actually work out the labor mix variance and labor yield variance using the previous concept that I'd given you, so that at least you should also be having work to do, right? So basically, that is what you expect to do in that question. So up to that point, guys, thank you so much, and let us meet in our next session. Thank you.